Uh, Good evening, all. So finally, we are here after 2 years. The HTSAS is back. So we have Mr. Ankit Mehta with us. So Ankit Mehta is the CEO and whole-time director of IdeaForge, which is a prominent drone manufacturer specializing in defense, homeland security, and industrial applications. Having been involved with the company since its inception, Ankit possesses a substantial experience within the drone industry, and he holds a bachelor's and a master's degree in mechanical engineering with special focus on computer-aided design and automation from the Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay. Ankit's accomplishment extend beyond his role as CEO. He was named among India's top 35 entrepreneurs under 35 by Entrepreneur magazine in 2017 and has received the Young Achiever of the Year award from the Ascent Foundation from the same year. Uh, Apart from that, IdeaForge has also earned prestigious accolades, which includes the Deftronics Award, Best Product Design Company in A&D in 2017, and the Marico Innovation Foundation Award in 2018. Ankit and his co-founders were also honored with the Young Alumni Achiever Award by IT Bombay in 2020. So I won't take much of your time and directly give the stage to Ankit and Janvi. So yeah.
So again, thank you so much. So thank you so much everyone for joining here. Uh, so Ankit very graciously, agreed to making this a fireside chat and driving the discussion basis the questions we wanted to ask him and not what he wanted to deliver it to us. So big thank you to Ankit for that firstly. So before we begin diving deep into what IdeaForge is, just a couple of interesting things that, I got to know about the company and I was really excited. So IdeaForge, I think, started for Ankit from the dorm room of IIT Bombay. It started as a project that he took up with his, I think, batchmates or juniors, if I'm not wrong. And from there, now we see that it's, I think, the first aerial surveillance listed company. So firstly, I mean, that's an inspiration to everyone sitting here. And I'm so glad we could have an inspiring entrepreneur like Ankit to open the session after 2 years. And one more very nice fact that I personally liked. So I think most of us have seen Three Idiots here. So the drone that was used in Three Idiots was the drone that was created by Ankit and his team in this table. So I mean, so I think that deserves a big round of applause, and that makes us even more inspired to know more about him and his journey. So thank you so much, Ankit, firstly for agreeing to come here and spend time with us. So I think talking about it from a student's perspective, there are many students who want to try out entrepreneurship. And at that point in time when you started, drone, aerial surveillance, these were very new aspects. So firstly, how did you build your conviction in making this a marketable product? And if there are entrepreneurs out here who want to work on large language models or things like that, which have not seen market feasibility till date, how would you inspire them to build conviction in their own idea in the first place?
That's a very good question. So first of all, I think she's been very gracious to say that I agreed to doing this. I think I forced this on you guys. So thank you for accepting to do a fireside chat. It's just much more convenient and simpler to do a Q&A. As far as building conviction, I think what I can do is I can delve into a little bit of our own experience of how we came about doing drones, and hopefully that will serve as some sort of template, but it isn't. I think it's a very, very non-linear journey, and usually it is discovering what will ultimately be the revenue spinner, or what will be the key product of an enterprise that you are starting, is usually a non-linear journey. It isn't many times what you started off with. It is many times what you end up building conviction on while trying to build what you started off with. And that's something that I've heard with so many people who have started their entrepreneurial journey, that a side track of what they were building actually ended up being the actual product that they built eventually, but they essentially had to experiment their way through. So to give you a quick sense of how we started doing drones, when we were still students at IIT Bombay, there is an innovation cell at IIT Bombay, and the mandate of the innovation cell was that if you have an innovative idea that can be potentially patented, then the institute will give you money to implement it. So I used to implement a lot of my ideas at that time, and I used to encourage a lot of my peers and my colleagues at IIT Bombay that if you have similar ideas, then institute has a facility to give money for that. So I used to take these sessions, and in one of the sessions, one of my co-founders, Rahul, he came up to me and he said, I want to make a hovercraft and float it in the Powai Lake next to the campus. So that's how the idea of aerial robotics came about, and he had this really beautiful vision that we will go in the middle of the night, take out engines from some of the scrap bikes that our seniors have left behind in IIT, and we will refurbish it and we'll make a nice hovercraft and float it in the lake. So a really fascinating idea. Aerial robotics was not something that was usually thought about in those times. Usually people used to look at different kinds of ground robots as more commonplace innovations that people would think of. So I also got very curious, and I had some motors, propellers lying around from some of my previous experiments with some competitions at IIT. So I just said that let's sit one afternoon and build some prototypes and see if it's feasible, and then we'll try and look for getting the capital needed. And I knew that it won't take much money to build those prototypes. So one afternoon we did that, and we realized कि ये तो बन गया. So लगा कि यार अब this is looking too simple and likely won't be patentable. And we thought that we need to think of something more innovative. And while trying to think of something innovative over the period of next 6 months, we came up with the idea of these 4 rotors spinning in opposite directions that can be a simpler way of building a helicopter. Now, a helicopter is a very mechanically complex device. So because helicopter was complex, this seemed very simple, and we thought of it. So hame laga we've changed the aviation world, right? Not knowing that, probably it was changed 60 years back and nothing really changed. However, because at that time the thought in the mind was कि पहले बनाएंगे फिर patent करेंगे, तो हमने बनाना शुरू कर दिया सोच के कि दुनिया तो बदल ही गई है अब. Then in 2004 we made our first prototype. Was not successful. In 2005 again we made another prototype which was successful. And since then we've been, since 2004 we've been working on the technology. And when I was graduating from IIT Bombay, and my team was actually 2 years my junior, the technical team. And I worked for 6 months. I had enough that I could survive the next 6, came out, and my team was still sort of finishing their last semester or whatever, right? So we started building a business plan, and at the same time we knew we have no capital, so we had to find ways of surviving. So we used to, on the weekends, take workshops that another friend of mine was conducting for college students to get hands-on experience on robotics. So that used to be the thing that paid the rent, got the bread and the butter on the table. And we also used to take these projects from IIT Bombay Aerospace Department, where the Aerospace Department wanted to collaborate with us, and they wanted these data loggers that would go on a regular hobby flying aircraft. So hobby flying, if any of you know, is basically where you take a small aircraft and try to fly it with a remote control, and you have direct control over its surfaces, so it's like you flying the aircraft. So the data loggers were essentially meant to measure the inertial parameters, the all the axes and the rotational axis of the drone, so that eventually it could be converted into an autopilot. That was the vision with which we started. However, the hardware was capable of acting as the autopilot, and we kept developing it. And over the next couple of years, we built the ability to control the UAV fully autonomously and built the control software, the ground control software for it. And in 2008, we helped IIT Bombay secure pole position in a competition alongside MIT US. And when that happened, a lot of the labs in India, the government labs in India took notice of our effort, and they realized that even MIT had a borrowed hardware, and they'd just done the software work. But as a team in India, for the first time, we had built everything from scratch. So they said that, can you give us your autopilot? Because they had a lot of drone programs that they were working on, and they were struggling to automate those programs. That's how in 2008-9 timeframe, we delivered the world's smallest and lightest autopilot to our DRDO labs and other labs in the country. And that seeded our entry into the drone space. While all of this was going on, in 2007, we actually registered our company, and we got incubated at Sign at IIT Bombay. And we were essentially just starting to do this. But before we got into doing drones, we were actually making these chargers for portable electronics. At that time, if you open any newspaper, you will see that mobile phones had started to penetrate the rural India. But electricity was not available. In many places, people had to go to Kirana shops, which were running on gensets, to try and charge their phone. They would have to pay money for it. Or, for example, people would be directly trying to charge their phones through the lead acid batteries that they get from a car. So a lot of things were going on that made us feel that potentially there is a market for building a device that can help survive electronics off-grid. We started working on that. Everyone we spoke to thought it's a great idea, but the guys we made it for didn't want it. So essentially, all of our ideation sitting in our rooms, talking to the entire urban landscape, thinking that it's a very logical idea, fell flat on its face. We sold more of them in the urban India than we sold them in the rural India. But while this was happening and we were still figuring out ki iska kya karna hai, this started to happen. So we got a parallel source of revenue, which we felt was potentially better suited to our experience and our aptitude. We always wanted to be a business that could do both energy devices and mobile robotics, and drones was something we had parallelly been building, and we were building the tech for it. And in 2008 this happened, and then in 2008 another thing happened, which was the attack on the Taj Hotel in Mumbai, and we heard news of naval helicopters peeping in from the 3rd and 4th floor of the hotel, trying to see what's happening inside, where we felt that maybe if we had a drone, we would have been able to better manage that situation. It would be safer for everybody for having a drone that was not as obviously staring into the window as a naval helicopter would be. So that inspired us to take all of the fun we were having with this technology over the years to make a product for our forces. In 2009 is when we launched it. In 2010 is when we made our first sales for that product. So that's our journey of how we started doing this. We pivoted when pivoting was not a word. We just had to do this to sustain ourselves and to take the right call for the business. Thankfully, it aligned to our passion, other passion. So we were not really sad that we had to do this. But yes, to completely disband an effort and to start a new one is always a journey in your mind. But thankfully, we were able to build something in parallel that helped us see through that phase.
Thank you so much. That was a great answer. Just extending to that, like you mentioned, 2010, you made your first product ready for market. But still, I'm sure the journey to actually have that kind of funds to keep working on the technology would have been very difficult, which is something that you can also see in new age businesses. Like, say, if somebody here wants to start their own LLM, right, which is an extremely expensive thing, or even if not an LLM, venture into a new generative AI business model. it requires heavy investment to keep on going, even if you have the first pivot ready. So in that case, if I'm not wrong, you had your first Series A funding in 2015. So, so how do you keep going in that case? How do you make your investors feel the conviction for your business? Because it's like a chicken and egg problem. You need funds to expand, to make your product better, but then you need to convince them for the product to get funds.
Yeah, no, it's a massive issue. So we actually raised our first round of investment for the chargers business in 2008. And when, I'm not sure if you can or cannot imagine, but hardware investing was like us, any event I would go to, essentially for the investors, conferences would be like a tiger out of his cage in a zoo. Right? People would go to see the tiger, but nobody would come near it if it's out of its cage, right? So, wo hal tha hamara. That hardware was such a rare commodity at that time. Nobody was building hardware technology. Everyone was building software applications. So, it was very challenging to raise funds in that environment. We were fortunate that we raised capital from our angel investor who invested early on in 2008 and then followed it up with something in 2009. And we were fortunate that Sign at IIT Bombay gave us some seed soft loan, it's called, at that time. I think it still continues in some form or fashion. So that was our source of capital early in 2007. And before that, actually, we got a government grant for that time it used to be called the Technopreneur Promotion Program. I don't know how many of you know that. But we actually got a grant from the Government of India to make our chargers. So all the funding till 2008-9 was all for the chargers business that we had started. Nothing had come for this. This business was generating its own revenue. And from a high volume, low margin, low tech business, we got the opportunity to pivot to a very low volume, high margin, but very high tech business. So for us, after having gone through the journey of building those chargers and the fun we were having with the drones technology, we felt like we should pivot, but we knew there was no money that's going to come for doing that pivot. So, and people were really confused, like if you would ever present a pitch that included both the chargers and the drones, basically people would get totally confused, right? Ki ek karna kya chahte hain life mein. So I think a lot of those ideas of, I'll do everything and everything is possible, etc., etc. They go out of the window when your options to survive become very limited. But we essentially from 2009, since we started doing the drones piece, till 2015 had to bootstrap our way. We had to sell our products, whatever we had, and we had to price them in a way that it can give enough back to us. And we had to therefore build something that was worth that price. So it is challenging, but that's the only way in which we were able to survive, because there was no capital available to be invested behind merely that idea. And hardware is hard. When you are making drones, you are trying to address the market that is led by defense, homeland security, government customers, which is further more challenging for investors to back up in that one sense. So it was very tough. We had to bootstrap our way all the way till 2015. In 2015 odd time frame, we actually bagged some large opportunities. So we had to literally prove that, at every stage of capital we raised, we had to prove that, yes, the tech works. Yes, there are large opportunities to be built around it. And usually we would get the capital just in time to sustain the ability to deliver those opportunities. So for us, it's been a very tricky journey, but I think, like I mentioned, it built a muscle that you have to build products that make their own money. And they make their own money enough that you can sustain your development needs, you can sustain your business, your employees, your employee salaries, as well as can give you enough headroom that you can build and scale from that capital. So I think those were that's a muscle you have to build. It's not easy to build, to be able to command a price that is challenging on its face, and is still delivered, and to deliver a product that can deliver that value back to the customer is something which takes a lot of effort. But yeah, I mean, that's what we had to do.
And just taking one more step further into this. So sometimes, do you feel that, maybe you were too early for the launch of the technology that you introduced in 2007? Do you feel that, there is a right time to introduce a particular technology in the market when it can be appreciated or valued by the users? In terms of that, how would you like to address the entrepreneurs who have ideas which may be too forward for the market?
Yeah, I think timing it does matter quite a bit. And if it's an idea whose time has not come, you will struggle for as many years as you will have to, right? But what is very important is to understand that product development journey, particularly when you're trying to build something which is deep tech, or build something that is, like I like to call it, or others do, is add net new knowledge to the world. Like if you are building something innovative, bit differentiated, something that people haven't done in the past, it will take its own time. And if it is very easy to build, then other people will catch up with you as well. So time spent in developing something is not linear, because technology is nobody's slave. It will get driven, particularly when you're pushing the boundaries of what's possible, only when it wants to get driven. And therefore, you cannot predict कि ये मैंने problem लिया है और ये अभी 4 महीने में solve हो जाएगा. अगर इतना linear journey होगा problem solving का, तो कोई और भी लेगा तो वो 4 महीने में solve हो जाएगा. And then your advantage in the market is actually just that 4 months, right? So depending on what kind of problem you are attacking, timing is material, but it's very hard to guess the timing. If everyone was able to get the timing right, then we won't have any challenges in the market, right? But at the same time, if you can survive while building something differentiated, survive while building something you have a lot of conviction in, then good things will happen. I think that's what, our journey, if at all it's an example of. It's an example of the fact that long-term preparation met the opportunity, and some magic happened over the last few years. So I think it's not easy to predict, but it does matter. It won't happen, but can you find a formula to do that? I don't think anyone has that formula.
Got it. And just one more question, from getting IdeaForge listed finally, right? So what qualities, or what are the things that you believe made you stand apart or led to the outcome that it did for you? So not only the audience here, but we'll have viewers on YouTube, etc., also watching this. So what are the qualities that you keep very close to yourself or your personality that have led the outcomes like they have for you?
I think there are many facets to, what I can only share what we have been able to do reasonably well over the years. One is that we've been able to keep a high quality team intact. And the reason why we were potentially able to keep that team intact is because we were all working for the business. None of us was working for each other, or nobody was working for me. And I think that makes a lot of difference, because when people are married to a common purpose, and you're not second guessing people's intentions, it becomes easier to resolve conflicts. It becomes easier to do the right thing for the business. And I think that is something which, we were able to straddle reasonably well over the years. What also helps there is the fact that there was a purpose to what we wanted to do, and there was a method by which we wanted to get there. And both of these things were relatively aligned for all of us. It was very close to intuitive for us. It was who we were, but in a manner that is definable and governable without needing active mind share invested behind it, and you could keep working and you'll still end up doing things the same way, but you had articulated it so that if there is ever confusion in how to decide what is the right thing to do for the business, you would have a ready reference that you could go back to and say that, okay, this is what we meant by, this is how we should take decisions. And small decisions, like I'll give you an example. The decision that whether when we are building a new office, whether to have canteen food free or not. A simple decision as that, right? And, you know, given the world we are in, and given the examples that the world has set for us, you will find it very challenging for any new company to, you know, not do the overture. However, you know, it are these overtures, when taken back, cause the maximum amount of hardships in people's mind. And you recently saw the backlash of removing a few articles from the shelves that people had access to earlier, right? I don't want to name any specific example, but you must have read it online, right? There was a backlash by just removing a few articles from the shelf. So I think we had to we took the long-term decision to not do it for free, but also took the decision that we need to make it affordable for people. And I think that helped us create an environment where you know, people had respect for what it was and would not waste it. On the other hand, you know, we were able to, in our minds, build something that was more sustainable for us as a business without having unnecessary repercussions. So just the mindset of thinking long term really helped us take so many decisions that were otherwise would have, you know, possibly led to a conflict. And something as simple as this can lead to conflict, right? Because, you know, there is heartache when you can't get people easily, and, you know, people value this, all the noise, all the buzzes about this, that, you know, workplace should be this, workplace should be that. So somewhere, you know, your values, your mission help you narrow your decision-making pool and helps everyone align to that structure. So those simple things were reasonable in my opinion. Obviously, do not think that it's a perfect journey in any of this. Do not aspire to be perfect in any of this. There are always shades of what that really transpires to be, but it is something that really helps. Secondly, I think I don't think there was a day where, when we got up that day, we did not feel like we don't want to do this. And I think that conviction and that persistence is something which is very important, has played an important role. And it was not just something that you know, I had to personally nurture. I think it was a trait that the entire team displayed. And because every day we were motivated to do what we do, and we had a ecosystem that somehow helped us sustain that passion. I think over a period of time, the opportunity, the need for the technology started getting the necessary roots. It was developing elsewhere in the world. It exploded in a fairly in a spectacular fashion, actually, in that one sense, immediately after the pandemic. And you know, the whole world started to think that drones are not just a good to have technology, they are now a must have technology. We won't have another war now in the world where drones will not be deployed. We won't have, if we don't want to be the next Armenia, because that's what happened to Armenia between the Armenia-Azerbaijan war, we have to make sure that we are on top of this technology as well. So it's just something that happened, but you know, if we were not there, prepared with systems that could help in those scenarios, the opportunity would not have been there to grab. And that's basically what ended up happening. So persistently doing it probably for reasons that were very core to our heart, and doing it as a team is something that helped us a lot.
Now, just a couple of questions, just trying to understand a little more about the drone industry. So, I think it's for you to start off in this industry, which I think even the surveillance industry, not the drone and aerial surveillance only, is dominated by Chinese players. So, in that case, while I get it that the contracts related to defense, etc., would be awarded to an Indian player, how do you see yourself competing for commercial use cases of aerial surveillance and drones with the Chinese players?
Yeah, I think it's a great question again. In terms of the journey that we've had versus the journey most of the Chinese players have had in this domain, our journey has had a starting point in doing a mission for our forces. And when we are trying to build it for our forces, there are three things that we had to be very, very conscious of from the very beginning. One, we had to be conscious that since our forces are using it, they will have to carry this in the field. We should have technology that offers the maximum flight time for the amount of weight we load on them. That was one. So performance was something which was very critical and core to us. The second piece was that because our forces are going to use this, it should be operable anywhere in our country, which implies that it should be a technology that should be operable in our high altitude areas. We have the highest battlefield in the world, starting at close to 6,000 meters takeoff altitude, to -30, -40 degree temperatures, to operating in the deserts in Rajasthan where temperatures can go as high as 55 degrees, to operating in the marine environment on our entire marine border. So the vagaries of the terrain that we had to design this for and the kind of environmental conditions we had to design our systems for built a strength that was critical for their operations and their users. And thirdly, you do not expect a Jawan to become a hobby flyer, right? Hobby flying is a fun activity that you can do within your line of sight, and most of the operations that the forces would have with this technology where they want to protect themselves is at a fairly large distance ahead of them, where they can gather intelligence and do necessary things that they need to from the point of view of understanding what's happening on ground. So we had to build a lot of autonomy in the operation so that the decision and the safety of flying is something that we take care of, and the safety of the equipment on ground and where it is taking off and landing from is something that the Jawan has to, or the operator has to take care of. So these three factors have been central to our approach towards developing the technology over the last few years. We call it performance, reliability, and autonomy. Whereas if you think of what has happened in the consumer world in parallel, particularly where the Chinese drones have taken off and have basically captured the largest market share, then they have essentially been building technology for consumer use. So the use and the experience is more remote control operated, relatively more manually driven, and while they've made the operation very simple, very intuitive, very easy to do, but that aspect of the user disengaging was not there. Thirdly, when we built it, and then of course, because it's consumer application, its survivability is in more general conditions that we experience rather than the harsh conditions that forces have to undergo and ensure mission critical operations are being done there. And for us, when building for our forces, perception is more important than perceived quality. So for a consumer drone, the perceived quality is more critical. The picture has to look pretty. It need not be telling you what is happening on the scene precisely, but it needs to look good. On the other hand, for us, we have to perceive what is happening on ground. We have to zoom into the target and show that the target is carrying a weapon or not, or what is the kind of activity going on ground. For example, our drones recently caught people selling country liquor. Like not just making, we have caught them making country liquor is a separate issue. They caught them also selling country liquor. So I mean, those kind of things are only possible when you can zoom into the target. You can really distinguish the activity going on from other activity. So those are the kind of things which we enable the user with, right? It doesn't matter how good that picture looks, as much as it matters that you are able to genuinely say what's happening on ground and take action. So I think the developmental approaches have been different. So we have built different strengths. Pound for pound, the performance we offer is genuinely superior. The amount of productive outcome that somebody can get from every flight of our drones is more. The amount of cycles they can operate this with reliability is more. And of course, the ease of operation from the point of view of not having that liability on the operator for taking care of the system's condition is something that makes their life very easy. Takes the issue of them being questioned for not operating it well out of the equation as much as possible. So I think that ways we've built it in a way that we are able to differentiate from those products on ground. And we have not seen that being the biggest issue. It does crop up from time to time, but it's not been the reason why, because the customer's job is getting done. I think that's central to how you look at it. So I think in general, the idea is to build something differentiated, and even against a very, very low cost, very good looking outcome, very finished product in that one sense, very reliable as well. You can still create your own niche and deliver meaningful value to your end customers.
Thank you again for the answer. So just one question that may be relevant for entrepreneurs or students who want to turn entrepreneurs from a very practical perspective. Sometimes more than deciding your trade-off of outcomes after you'd have, after completing your education, for you it was IIT Bombay, maybe from here or any other institution that students are graduating out of, how do you convince yourself of trading off the outcome that comes post-graduation and convincing your family for taking up this forward-looking ideas and, taking a stall of the direct visible outcomes? How easy was it for you?
Yeah, so I was sharing this example a couple of times this afternoon that, I did not sit for placements and I did not apply to go study abroad as well. And this one afternoon, a friend of mine after lunch came up on the weekend and he said that, Ankit, tujhe dar nahi lagta kya? And I wanted to start a company at that time. And to be honest, for me, that concept, that did not strike me that I was doing something different or difficult. But when he did pose the question to me, the only thing I could think of was that, I'm probably okay with the worst case scenario, which was basically that this won't work and I'll have to find a job. And I think institutions like where we are here today and institutions like where I was studying at IIT Bombay, these institutions instill as much, at least that much confidence in all of us that, we'll find a job, right? Irrespective of how much time we'll wean off. Yeah, maybe we will not find it at the peak of what we would have been earning at the time of, if we had stayed with it, but we'll at least find a job, right? And if we can live with ourselves and live with dignity, having made that choice, I think that confidence each one has to have if you want to embark on anything like this, because it is hard and there will be delta, and that delta will get caught up when it will get caught up, if ever, or you may again at some point in time exceed that delta against your average peer or whatever it is, right? So, I mean, these are choices you make and you have to be comfortable about those choices. And I think when I thought about that question, I think that was my response. And to date, I think that is my response to that part of the whole equation. Now, when it comes to, I think, convincing the family, I think it's the trickier part because I think families, many a times, if you are privileged and they do not need for you to earn for their sustenance, then you can take the necessary steps that you want to take. That is the potential. But at least at that time, it would rob them of the social proof that they need when they interact with the rest of the family and the society in general, right? So I think that is something which is probably a bigger struggle for families than the struggle of sustenance. And in some cases, sustenance may be a real problem. And I think that's a choice that each one will have to make for their own. That is that a real problem, and does it need you to park your ambition for a bit and get back to it? But if you are passionate about an idea, to be honest, there is no, in my opinion, and I always felt so, that if at all I am not able to sustain this, then I'll probably park it for a bit and get back to it. So I think as long as you are true to your passion and you have a long-term view of your life and career, I think either detour is not going to be a compromise, and all you have to do is you have to learn how to live with those choices in your own mind first, and then the rest of the world usually is very kind, to be honest. Like, and if you are doing your own thing, either ways, people are very kind. Like in general, nobody will come and tell you कि यार ये तू क्या कर रहा है और मैंने तो इतना कर लिया. I mean, कौन शो बोटिंग करता है? At least I don't think कि इन environments में कोई ऐसे friends होंगे जो शो बोटिंग कर रहे होंगे कि यार देख मैंने ये कर लिया और तूने ये भी नहीं किया. I think that doesn't happen. Like, people are very nice in general. So yeah, I think society is not the concern, but some practical considerations are. Yeah, it's always an uphill battle, honestly, against these external sources. So was for me, but managed.
So last question from my end, just if you have any word of advice for students who specifically want to start with unconventional new age businesses, or as a student and then starting out as an entrepreneur. Say if we can have 3 key takeaways or as many as you'd want to offer.
So I think always plan for a long journey. I think, if you plan for a long journey, first thing that one will do is one will do it right and do it for the right reasons. And I think that if it does not take as long a journey, should be a surprise and a welcome privilege rather than the default assumption, and then get frustrated that it did not happen soon for me, or uske liye ho gaya aur iske liye nahi hua. All of that should not be what should distract you from building a business. If you're truly passionate about the idea that you're building for, I think if you're doing this for making money, then I think there are several less painful ways of doing it to make money. So I think maybe money is probably not the only reason why one should want to start. I think if you are starting, then one should start to make a difference, whatever that domain is. And we should have something to contribute. We should have our own unique perspective, identity to the problem we are solving. If we have merely ये fashion में है, इसको कर लेते हैं kind of a approach, then again, I just suspect the longevity of that mindset and that thought process. So I think for me, preparing for the worst, including knowing that it may take too much time, and making sure that you can survive that time with as much clarity as you can get early, will be great. I mean, doing it for wrong reasons can be very painful, and it can make you not the person you maybe would be if you had planned it for the long term. Sometimes that frustration comes up in destroying relationships, not working well with the team, not behaving the right way with the team that you are working with. So a lot of that stems from that need for urgent and instant gratification. And I think greed, envy and ego are 3 critical factors that you should not do this with. I mean, this is not something you're doing because you are feeling greedy about doing it, because you feel कि उसने कर लिया तो मैं कर लूँ, and also because कि यार इसने कर लिया तो मैं तो इससे अच्छा हूँ. I mean, nobody's journey is written in stone, and whether you will succeed or not, and whether these emotions are sufficient to sustain the journey, I'm not too sure. I've had a long journey, so I can say that preparing for the long haul is definitely something which will help do the right things for the business that you want to build.
Thank you so much for being so patient with all the questions.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
So I think we can open the questions to the audience now. So.
Hello. Hello. Yeah. Good evening, Ankit. I have two specific questions. One is in this journey of in your overall journey, which was your lowest point and how did you come out of it? This is one question. Second part is, as in you sell to the forces, right? So the dynamics of selling is totally different. So initially when you were trying to make your deals, what kind of experiences you had and how did you get through that? These are two specific questions. Yeah.
So lowest point is, I was sharing this in the afternoon as well. It's a very cyclic problem, to be honest. Like if you have done this for long enough, you'll realize that, one day money is the lowest point. The other day product is the lowest point. The third day, something at the customer end is the lowest point. Fourth day sales is the lowest point. Then people are the lowest point. And then, voila, again, funding is a big problem. So, and the scale of the problem keeps becoming bigger. As you grow, and if you are growing, the problem scale will keep growing bigger, but the problems will be cyclic and they'll keep happening. So at a moment, at every moment, there is something which is, nagging and something that can be potentially life-threatening, right? So first of all, I think knowing that it is normal is very important. We realized it late, but I think that is something which is going to happen. Like you will have your lowest points in a cyclic way every once in a while. So expecting that there will be one low point and you will be out of it is something which is not going to happen. Just my own experience of surviving is that maybe we were near death, multiple dozens of times in this journey. So, each of those points were near death. Like literally we didn't have money to pay the next one's salary. But what helped us survive was the fact that we were very clear that with all honest effort, if we are not able to survive, we are not able to survive. So that helped us survive. Right? That mindset. यार सब कुछ कर लिया, ऑनेस्टली किया, जितना सोच सकते थे किया, ऐसा भी नहीं किया कि खुद ही करना है. The other thing is that lot of times we get into this place कि मुझे सॉल्व करना है या मेरा ये रोल है टीम में तो मुझे प्रॉब्लम फिक्स करनी है. I think that vulnerability also helps surviving sometimes. When you go to your team and you say I'm not able to make the ends meet, and there is some magic in that vulnerability that will find you help from somewhere. Even if it is not directly related to that conversation that you had with your team. You just have to have that conversation early enough while being as late as possible that you don't die. Right? Ultimately what matters is that the business survives and not the fact that our ego survives or the fact that we did it survives. I think some of those things really matter because in tough times, the beauty is that sharing tough times and sharing negative things divides it amongst many people, whereas sharing good things multiplies the joy. So I think you have to think of it in that way and try to make sure that you share both equally well and not just one. There is very little glory in making the business fail because you wanted to solve it. I think from the point of view of having government as a customer, see, government as a customer has a process. And the faster you reconcile to that, which always takes time, the more predictable it becomes in your mind, because you map out that process of how they buy and various methods, means, exemptions that they have within the process, and the easier it is to sell to them. So we did identify what were those methods of how they buy soon enough, and we did the right partnerships, we did the right processes that allowed us to go through the cycle with them. But it's a very patient process, and it takes time to sort of really experience it the first few times. But if it does happen, then you have to go through it. The other thing which happens in government business is that you can't bluff your way away by making tall claims and not making them pan out on ground. You will ultimately have to write a detailed specification of what you're delivering, and you will have to meet each and every line item. So that is something which sort of builds that very specific strength that you will achieve what you write. And therefore, you will be able to go through, you will achieve when you are getting tested, and you will achieve when you are able to, when you are delivering. Only then will that be accepted in the process. And that is something which, again, builds a very unique strength. In the consumer world, it is okay to say कि ये 20 घंटे चलता है, चलता 8 घंटे भी नहीं है. In the consumer world, it's okay. But in the defense world, what they will do is they will make you turn it on, and they will make sure that you show it to them that it works for 20 hours, and then they will buy it, if at all. And then after they buy it, when they get the device, they will check it again, that what you delivered, whether it runs for that time period or not, and then they will accept it. So I think very little room in overstating your capabilities is there when it comes to government procurement. So reconciling those things and being very accurate about your claims is very material in handling some of these things. The process is the process. They will do a tender, whatever, right? In some cases, if they have powers, they may not even do a tender, but that is just a process. But ultimately, this and its delivery matters. You can't write 20 hours if you can't deliver 20 hours. And if you can deliver 20 hours, then you have to specify the conditions in which you deliver 20 hours, and those conditions should be relevant to the user's environment. पता चला कि आपने लिख दिया कि यार ये 20 hours स्टैंड बाय पे चलता है, लेकिन यूजर ने तो यूज करना है ना, तो इट इज इमटेरियल फॉर हिम और हर कि ये 20 घंटे चलता है. सो आई थिंक इट्स ऑल अबाउट दैट.
Since you are a listed company, I may take the liberty of asking something about the financials of the company.
Sure.
Obviously, it must be in the public domain, right? So currently, for the last quarter just ended, what sort of revenue and profit and, from an investor's point of view, how attractive is your company?
So while the numbers are public, last quarter we did about 97 crores of operating revenue and about 18 odd crores of profit after tax. And this is limited audit numbers, so we have to take them as that. In terms of attractiveness for investment for in market, I think we have to look at, particularly in this domain of building hardware in India, there are businesses that will be led by IP. They will have their own intellectual property and they are building the entire technology stack themselves. For example, at IdeaForge, we have filed over 62 patents, and 25 of those patents have been granted. Another few are under the process of getting granted in various geographies across the world. So it's an IP-led business. We build our technology and we sell our products. There are businesses that operate under what is typically known as technology transfer agreements. So those businesses get technology from outside, they do the full transfer of the IP here in India, and then they build those products in India. And then there are businesses that are just built to print. They just get the production process to India, they assemble everything and then they sell. So there is a certain amount of value in the value chain that you can associate with each type of business. So in the overall food chain, I think we have that value proposition for investors where Indian IP is getting created for a very, very critical domain, and it is getting delivered on ground.
Since you have this special advantage of having developed your own IP, does the government not support you by giving advance for the product development?
There are methods with which the government does support advances for product development. However, we may not have leveraged those processes yet, because we were able to develop the technology well before there was a need to specifically seek that product development expense. But we do get advances on contracts that we serve with them. That does happen.
Do you have competitors?
Of course, we have competitors. What happens with us is that most of our competitors are specific to the category of product that we are building. For example, we have a product that is a combination of taking off like a helicopter and flying like a regular airplane, then retransitioning into being a helicopter and landing at the same spot. It's called a hybrid VTOL, fixed wing VTOL hybrid drone. We have a different set of competitors who compete with us in that domain, versus we have a product that flies just like a regular helicopter, and it is all the time consuming more energy than a regular aircraft or a hybrid aircraft would consume. So we have competitors who are also competing with us in that domain. Within that, there are products that compete with us for doing surveillance on ground. Then there are products that compete with us that do mapping on ground. So we have various competitors in various domains. Competitors are both Indian and global.
Yeah, but since you mentioned about the finance problem, money problem, so I thought because of your own IP and the niche market that you serve, investors would be running after you rather than you looking for the investors.
So for a long time, hardware is a domain which investors did not understand or did not have a great experience in our country building. So I think that may be one of the reasons why it was challenging. Again, serving a defense or a government customer is another vagary of investing that is not easy to surmount. Yeah. So people have had their experiences, which may or may not be true in a specific case, but as a general perception at that time. Now it's no longer the case, but at that time the perception was what it was. Thank you.
Sir, I have a question. Like today, drones are very commonplace, and any good engineering institutes, they have a, as you said, hobby flying clubs and drone clubs, right? So if any aspiring engineer wants to start out today, so how would you suggest he should go? Because most of these hobbies are left when we graduate out of the colleges. So that's my
I think there's a lot happening in this domain. Like I said, there are hundreds of manufacturers who are building drones. There are more than hundreds of companies who are doing services based on drones. So there is a lot of activity happening in the domain, and anyone who is starting out has to identify, in my opinion, a niche where they can add differentiated value. If there is no differentiated value that is being offered, then in my opinion, it's a race to the bottom. And that is something which is not sustainable given the fact that the working capital cycles will remain what they remain. Like, I mean, if it was a mom and pop store where you get cash upfront and you don't have to hold inventory for too long, it would have been a different different business altogether. But it is a hardware business where you have to invest, build a product, and then you have to ship it. And then after some time you get payments depending on who your customer is. In some cases you may get it upfront. So you have to design a business around the fact that you have certain working capital cycles to account for the business to be self-sustaining on its growth path.
Yeah. Are you looking at any other major segments? I mean, I'm specifically looking at intelligence for water and smart agriculture.
Smart agriculture, yes. We are looking at that space. We do have products that do multispectral mapping. We typically look to partner with people to do the analytics bit on it. So that we do. Underwater, we are not yet working towards.
It's linked to smart agriculture.
Right, yeah. I mean, just that underwater we are not doing, but at least on land, crop health monitoring is an area that we can support even today.
We can contact you offline for some.
Sure, absolutely.
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 Hi, Ankit.
Hi.
So if I understand correctly, you serve government is your customer, right? So that means you have developed quite specific capabilities to serve the government. Now you can use these capabilities to actually get into the consumer space and build drones, right? So that to expand your reach or expand your market size. So are you sort of thinking of doing that?
So we are not doing it for consumer space. We do it for the civil space. For example, if we have built a product that can serve a defense application, we will typically build it only if it also has some uses on the civil side. However, when I say civil, I'm not talking about consumer for us particularly at this point in time. Consumer is a very different space. It's a very large volume, very low value space where you have to offer, and the primary advantage that the user is looking for is very good imagery. So that's where the distinction is. Yeah.
One more question. I mean, you mentioned the role of CINE in while you were developing your product, right? And they also funded you with some initial funds and all. If you look at entrepreneurial climate in India, a lot of people are trying in different colleges with these things, but they lack this kind of institutional support, right? So how do you think that this entrepreneurial climate in this kind of ecosystem, especially in tier 2, tier 3 cities, engineering and management colleges can grow, right? I mean, how do you look at this?
So, just to sort of further extend that fact, we also got support from CIIE, and we are one of the ex-incubators of CIIE. And in terms of the support available to tier 2, tier 3 cities, what I hear and what I heard today is that we are already opening CIIE centers in tier 2, tier 3 cities so that entrepreneurship in the local space can also be encouraged. And what I also hear is that the government programs like Nidhi EIR, Nidhi, etc., they have these outreach centers that are there across states in various colleges. And a vast majority of applications actually come from tier 2, tier 3 cities. Am I correct? Yeah. So I think the awareness is increasing steadily. Maybe some places may still not have incubation physical facilities, but access to and information about their existence in other parts of the country is, I think, something which is more readily accessible now than it used to be. I mean, it was definitely not as deep earlier.
So two questions. First, regarding the IP itself. So, means drone is a very high-tech business where the price can range from few $1,000s to millions of dollars. And considering that US and China have a very good supply chain and also a very good ecosystem developing since 20 years. So how challenging is the R&D here in India, and like how is IdeaForge facing, like tackling those challenges? And the second question is that, like now big players are also entering the drone business. Reliance did some acquisitions this year also and last year. Adani entered the agri-tech business using drones. They acquired some company. So what's the mode for the IdeaForge now?
So in terms of supply chain, typically what we get from the rest of the world is something that not necessarily can only be built off a particular country. So that ways we have a diversified supply chain, and that supply chain is for national security purposes, particularly the data oriented supply chain is already X any of the land border connected countries of the country. So that ways we have ensured that we are not getting things from the wrong locations for the important aspects of what it takes to build this drone. In many other areas, supply chain is not as big a risk in the sense that these are relatively dumb components which are easy to build anywhere in the world. However, both the data-oriented subsystems and the non-data-oriented subsystems, a lot of effort on indigenization is underway, and we have to develop a supply chain here in India. Volumes were not that much earlier. Like India was a very small local consumption volume, and we did not have any business that was already shipping to the rest of the world. So from that point of view, it's just started to build out, and like I know of half a dozen companies that are making brushless DC motors in India. I know of many companies that are building propellers in India. So a lot of indigenization, composites ka toh, like lot of companies are doing composites in India. So there is a decent supply chain getting built up, and quite a bit of is being built up by us trying to localize our sources of inventory. However, in India, it is a little bit of a challenge, because when you want to build something which is non-standard and push boundaries, it is challenging for us to first do it, and then it is challenging for the ecosystem to replicate it. So that challenge remains, and we would definitely want an ecosystem where the ecosystem challenges us by coming up with something which is better than what is available elsewhere in the world. So I think it may still take some time for us to get there, but we are seeing a lot of green shoots of having that supply chain in India. The other question that you had regarding the larger players entering the domain, I think we've had that from the very beginning. Like from the very beginning of our participation in this industry, barring the very few early years, we've seen participation of large entities from a really long time. And I think because we are as vertically integrated as we are, and we build pretty much the entire technology stack ourselves and customize each and every subsystem in a way that it works really well together, it's not a very easy mode to circumvent. The other thing is that our drones have perhaps the highest experience of operating in these environments in the country. Our customers have done over 375,000 flights on our systems. And that experience of operating it in the vast variety of environments that the country has to offer is something that we keep leveraging on as a cycle of, perpetual cycle of improving the product, making sure it's more reliable, and keep building upon it. So it's something that can't be shortcut to because of just the variety and extremes that exist out there in terms of environmental conditions.
So your product essentially right now is more centered towards low range and low altitude, right? I know you're trying to improve on both the parameters, but essentially extending to his question, the contracts for larger long endurance drones are still going to the foreign players out there. So how is your R&D investment in line with kind of capturing this segment of the market? Because I know that this takes time for you to build capabilities on those lines.
while also beating the competition, while also facing supply chain constraints from China, right? How is your strategy around this?
So when we say low altitude, typically it is about how high the drone can climb from the takeoff location. We obviously make drones that can even take off from 6,000 meters altitude. But the height they will achieve from that takeoff point may be about 1,500 meters maximum. So typically the larger drones, the way they are built sort of on the lines of a regular aircraft, right? So they will operate at close to about the medium altitude long endurance drones, MALE as it is called, they will operate at about 3 to 5 kilometers or more in terms of altitude from ground. And the HALE category will operate almost at commercial airliner kind of altitudes. Now these are drones that can be very specifically be bought only by defense as a use case. Nobody else really has a use for those kind of drones. Therefore, in the desire to build systems that are both dual use, they can be used for civil applications as well. It doesn't directly, get into a place for us to participate in, or like a want for us to participate in. And again, the learning curve and the investment that it will take to build it is something that we have to measure against the demand and how much of that demand has already been fulfilled. And after making those investments, how soon will you be able to recover the investment as a business? So there are a lot of mathematics involved in thinking about it, but broadly not being dual use and also requiring disproportionate amount of capital for uncertain outcomes. And not to mention, we don't yet have a differentiated offering to directly offer. So I think all of that tells us that it's not necessary to get into every space. And there will be spaces like that, like consumer or any other space that we won't get into.
So you have outlined for us your entire journey. You started out by building drones yourself, then you founded this company, and now you have done an IPO, and this would be the definition of success for any entrepreneur sitting in this room today. How would you say your day-to-day has changed compared to the very early stages of the startup when you used to work on the product yourself? You were tinkering out with different, like you said, car parts and stuff to make a hoverboard, and now you are a CEO of a very big publicly listed company which is doing daily contracts for the army. So your day-to-day must have changed a lot. So my first question is, how has that changed? And second, on a more personal level, do you have any sort of regrets? Is there anything that you wanted to do which you weren't able to do, or in any other sense that you still wish that you could have worked on the product, or you were more involved in the R&D process?
Yeah, I think, see, one good thing that we did very early on, because we had a team, like we are 4 of us at IdeaForge, and the two of my co-founders were my juniors at IIT, and we had my childhood friend Vipul join us in 2008, and he is the CFO of the company right now, also looks after the operations. So when you have a team, typically you don't have to do everything, first of all, right? And if the team has complementary skill sets, that makes your life that much easier. There was a lot of effort that used to go in raising capital, wanting to raise capital, attempting to raise capital, let me put it this way. And if not as equity, but also as debt and in other factors, that used to be one of the roles that I had to take on for myself. I did continue to ideate with the team on technology from the very beginning, and that's one of the reasons why many of the patents that we have filed I would still be co-author on those patents, right? So I've not definitely let the passion for technology exhaust out, and that's largely because we have a complementary team that actually is you can trust them to execute and deliver. So team is really important in my opinion. For me, I think the overall, I would say that there is very less execution responsibility now, and there is more responsibility to keep the overall value for the entire set of ecosystem that we have around us, including stakeholders, and keep thinking of what will maximize that value and how to deliver it in an executable time frame with the right set of means, right? You can't go overboard, you can't go underboard. So you have to figure out a way of doing it at the pace at which it can be done. You can't magically become large company and have multiple people. So within the limits of what's possible, you have to keep iterating and keep building incrementally. So a lot of my time goes in that and in some of this, which the rest of the team does not pick up usually. But it is definitely a great place to be, where the leadership has the ability to carve out time to think about the business more deeply than only being involved in day-to-day activities. So I think it really helps, but you obviously have to keep your eye on what's happening and come in and make sure that you do the right things at the right time for the business. In terms of regrets, no, I think, sometimes I do feel that I could do more technology because I am a technologist at heart, but the balance of things, it feels like it's okay as well, right? I mean, you can't get in and mess it up as well, right? Now you're far removed from execution, so maybe you'll do more harm than good. So as long as you are able to work with the team and think through a few things, have your ideas evaluated in a way that it feels good, I think it's great.
Thank you.
Can you talk about how did you scale your manufacturing?
So the best way to scale manufacturing is to get people who know how to scale manufacturing. So I think we just got experienced people on board who have set up production lines in the past, who have set up production lines for high mix, low volume products as well. So you have to match the needs that you have with what you can get, and then get those people on board and follow their lead largely. In many things, you don't have to break new ground till the time you reach a unique problem. So if you reach a unique problem, you have to break new ground. But otherwise, it's something which the world knows how to do well. You can follow suit and get it done.
We have seen that historically in recent years, startups keep generating value while they're held privately. What was the reason for you to come up with the IPO very soon in the valuation life cycle?
So basically, the customer that we serve, or customer who is a large fraction of our revenue base today, to service that customer, there aren't a lot of international capital sources that are willing to participate in the journey easily. And there aren't a lot of local pools of capital available that would not come with the restriction of reading. And the size of the check, as it goes up, the sample space keeps reducing as well, right? So at an early stage today, there may be a lot of capital available, but at the late stage, there may or may not be as much capital available in the space. And even if it is available, is it unlocking the stakeholder value in the right way or not is another question. And if you look at the markets today, the markets are receptive of these kind of business. So it was felt like the stage at which we were was not an unviable stage to do this. So we decided that we should probably go in this route.
So in this case, would you say that government being your customer was a disadvantage for you from raising capital from certain sources?
Yeah, that has been one of the challenges of being in this space for a really long while. Even today, if you will go and ask a private investor, they will ask you this question for sure. But ultimately, you have to think about it, right? It's drones. A lot of outdoor work, infra work is being done. And all of that is largely controlled by the government or PSU entities, or they're the largest owners of that kind of asset class, right? So where will you go? If you have to map land, then you have to somewhere do it for the government or with the government. If you have to protect a space, then the largest space to protect is under government control. So those are very natural outcomes for this business. So domains like logistics and others, as they open up, a little bit of more commercial or civil uses will open up, which are purely private. However, within that, the cost economics has to match up for it to be scalable.
Last question is, now you're a publicly listed company. How do you safeguard whatever research that you're doing on the defense projects? You will have certain kind of information with you, defense professionals working with you. How do you safeguard these kind of information while you also have to share a lot of information publicly?
I think usually the markets respect the need for confidentiality. So wherever there is a need for that, we should be able to do it. I think that is something which is being done wherever it is necessary, is what my understanding is right now. Yeah. Great. Okay.
Just curious, I wanted to ask you about the original charges which you were building. What was it really about?
What was it really about?
Yeah, actually I came across an idea which has this charging unit on the top. It is mounted somewhere 2 meters off the ground, and it will have a rope. You lift the sandbag which is attached to it, and once it is in the highest position, that is maximum charge, it will go down slowly, it will charge the phone, or it will light a light bulb, LED bulb. So is it something like that?
No, it was actually something you could carry in your pocket, and whenever you get a call, you could just attach the charger and you could roll a wheel on your trouser and it'll keep charging the phone. So if you would crank it for about a minute, it would give you 3 to 4 minutes of talk time and about 2 to 3 hours of standby time on your phone, and all on a feature phone. So smartphones came, many things happened, like it just basically that use case vanished.
Yes.
It does survive in Decathlon now with the dynamo torches that you get. That's more of what happens over there.
Yes.
Yep.
So thank you so much for your time. I'm pretty sure everyone here appreciates that you traveled all the way just to be here and give us all your thoughts so candidly. So thank you so much for that.
I'm glad to be here.
And I think we just have one small token that we can present it.
Oh, I do. I have one.